Hey everyone, so here we are, day 27 of the 30-day ideas challenge, and it is Sunday night, and I thought I'd better quickly do my little training. We have gone and had dinner. You might have seen that share that I did in Reclaiming You, but it was funny because my birthday being Valentine's Day, Richard rang up to make a booking, and they said, oh no, we only have tables for three. And he's like, are you kidding? It's Valentine's Day. Like, we think of it as a day synonymous with lovers and partners. And anyway, so we ended up going tonight instead of tomorrow night. But that's not what I want to talk about. What I do want to talk about, and it's something that I thought about when I was actually eating. And I thought about it was funny because when I was working in the pharmacy, this is years ago, one of the most common prescriptions was, like Nexium, Somac, Losac, Pariet, all those kind of proton pump inhibitors, things for reflux. And I thought, you know what? It is such a common affliction, condition, symptom, if you will. And it was interesting. I was just having a little look then. And it's funny because Nexiums are really common. That's the brand name. Really common, as I said. A lot of people are on it. Do you realize I was looking here several years ago, they had annual sales on this particular product, and this must be globally, surely, $6 billion, right? This is AstraZeneca. And it's funny because when you look at these proton pump inhibitors, so as I said, we're talking here about, reflux, indigestion, GERD, things like that. Anyway, heartburn. So, as I said, really, really common. They're not designed to be taken long term. I've seen people, I even know people that have been taking something like a Nexium, some sort of proton pump inhibitor, for 10, 20 years. They're not designed to be taken that long. In fact, they've actually found that, after a year, if you look at the bloods of people that have been taking these, they, when you look at iron, you look at B12, you look at things like that, they've found that, if you're suppressing the acid, which is what a lot of these ones are doing, they're inhibiting your acid production in your stomach because, people are thinking that they've got too much acid, like high acid symptoms, they're thinking. And so this particular, as I said, medication, which is a proton pump inhibitor, hi, say hey if you're there, just talking about acidity here, and we're talking about, Nexium and some of those medications that are commonly prescribed, or even there's Zantac, which is a histamine 2 receptor, medication that people will often take as well. We're just saying that, this common medication, if you're suppressing the acid all the time, quite often these people are ending up with B12 deficiency, iron deficiency, and longer term, they've actually shown it increases your risk of like Clostridium, it increases your risk of, necrosis and problems with the bones, like more brittle bones, because if you're stopping all the acid, how are you breaking down your food? How are you actually absorbing your nutrients? So they were never designed to be taken long term. And, whether it's something that the people are just keeping, people are continuing to take it, or whether doctors are continuing to prescribe it, could be both scenarios. But the problem is it actually addressing the problem, or is it suppressing and band-aiding it? And as I said, when I just had a look there, and it was like when I saw that one particular brand, the Nexium was like $6 billion worth of sales, I'm just like, oh my gosh. And the thing is, as I said, I know people and I've seen people and I've had clients that have come to see me that are taking these medications, and don't get me wrong, time and a place for everything. But often what happens is, when you're on them, if you try to go off them, you have a rebound effect. So it's like you get the worst heartburn of your life, if you try to go off it. So you've got to gradually go off these sort of, medications and things like that. But as I said, they're only designed to really be taken short term, not long term, because of all the side effects. And interestingly, what they're finding more and more is, Avril, hi, how are you? We're just talking about acidity here. I was actually just talking about, and I mean, you're probably familiar with, some of the histamine 2 receptor antagonists and proton pump inhibitors and things like that. I was just saying about how common they are and how they're only designed to be taken short term. And we're finding people are taking them long term, and they're ending up with all of these issues, like all of these, mineral, even B12, iron deficiencies, problems with the bones, Clostridium and things like that. Because if you're suppressing all the acid, how do you break down your food? How do you assimilate the nutrients? How do you absorb these vitamins and minerals? And, quite often they are finding it's actually more that there's low acidity that is the issue. And what happens as we do get older, we don't have as much stomach acid. And you might be familiar with the blood typing diet. Peter Diamo, who was this naturopathic physician, and over the many years that he treated thousands of patients, he was finding there was, common threads amongst the different blood types. And he found, and I know one of them that always stood out to me is blood type A, because I'm a blood type A. So typically we don't have as much stomach acid as, say, a blood type O. So that's why a blood type O, which is kind of like the universal donor, so it's probably the most common type of blood type, they, are better at meat and things like that, because they, can actually stomach it. They can break it down. Where blood type A's, he suggests, are better at sort of maybe having a little bit of fish and more vegetarian, because they don't have the same acid. So, it's one of those things. I thought I'd just quickly share with you a few different things that you can potentially try, rather than always having to go down the medication route. And as I said, time and a place for everything, but you don't want to be relying on some of these medications that are only designed for short-term use. They're not designed for long-term use, and they do have a lot of side effects. And as I said, if they're stopping all your acid and you're not breaking down your nutrients, you're not absorbing vitamins and minerals, that's a big problem over time. So, and they reckon that, I looked at some of the stats, something like up to 40% of Americans kind of suffer from, some sort of acid reflux symptoms. And as I said, really common here in Australia. It was one of the top, I'm going to say 3 prescriptions. It was so common, those proton pump inhibitors. And, a lot of people will rely on, I don't think Zantac there, but some of those kind of, Tums sort of formulations. I think some of them had aluminium in them, and some of them were removed from the market. But, it's like, it is such a common affliction for people, such a common condition, but it might actually be, as I said, that there's actually low acid rather than high acid. So we know some of the symptoms of, reflux and GERD can be things like, heartburn sensation, feeling like things are repeating on you. It can even be, they say, things like, you're waking up in the night kind of almost choking. I mean, that can also, you'd be thinking sleep apnea and stuff like that too. But even things like bloating after meals, nausea, belching, bloating, gas, hoarseness upon waking, even things like chronic throat irritation and chronic coughing. Like I know my mum had a chronic kind of, always clearing her throat. And that's what they sort of ended up saying it was with her. It was, acid reflux, and it was GERD, and she was prescribed Nexium. And as I said, that's the only problem when, people are on it long term, because it's not designed for long term. So, as I said, some of the complications of having, too much acid can result in Barrett's esophagus and things like that. But quite often, as I said, it's actually that there's low acid to begin with, not too much. Now, as I said, some of the causes and risk factors that are sort of associated with it. So definitely inflammation's been linked with it. Different hernias and things like that can cause some of those symptoms of acid reflux. But even they're finding more and more carbohydrate malabsorption can be an issue. Aging, as we get older, we don't have as much stomach acid. And naturally you find that, like I used to see people that were older that were coming to see me, and they were tending to favour carbs like toast and cereals and things like that, because they felt they could digest it better. And it sort of makes sense, because if you're not being able to break down meat and foods like that, you're not going to gravitate towards them. You're going to go for something which is easier to digest. But even things like being overweight. So, if something like 68, 69% of Australians are overweight or obese, and there's similar statistics all around the world, that's what they say. When you're overweight, you're carrying extra weight, that can put extra pressure on the valves and the sphincter, and that can allow the release of more acid. Large meals, something else to think about. As they say, it's like, when you think about the stomach, and even when the stomach's completely full, just say it's the size of 2 fists, people are having a lot more on their plate. So, it's amazing when you think about, and they're not chewing properly, which is another problem. They're just kind of almost inhaling their food. And hey, I'm guilty of that. I did that for many years. But, all of these things, if you're implementing, so as I said, taking time to chew your food, managing your weight, losing weight if necessary, having smaller meals, even smoking. Smoking will increase the production of acid. It also can sort of have an impact on the the sphincter. Medications and supplements can also, have a role in aggravating some of those symptoms. Too much exercise, even having low magnesium. So magnesium deficiency, which is really quite common, that can lead to improper functioning of that little sphincter that is going to stop the acid from escaping. So, you can start to see, well, there's all these little things that you can be doing. And then even from a diet standpoint, I often say to people, you could consider maybe trying a little bit of apple cider vinegar with the mother in water before meals, 20 minutes before a meal containing protein. See if that helps you. You can try, there are supplements that you can take, it's like a betaine hydrochloride with pepsin or something. And you can start with a small amount before a meal with protein and see if that makes it better. And if it doesn't, you could try like a higher amount, like move to say from half a capsule to 1 capsule and see how you go. And, sometimes, as I said, it's actually that it's the low acid rather than the high acid. And of course, you want to just look after everything in terms of stress management, and maybe you want to bring in some fermented foods and some prebiotics and, anti-inflammatory diet, which could be like, oily fish and things like that. So even Manuka honey, and then, there's so many elements that you can sort of look at before always having to go down that, medication route straight away. And also, quite often people like to have supplements. I always keep Iberogast on hand. That's a registered product here in Australia. It's a herbal supplement. I used to have a lot of gastroenterologists had been recommending it to people when I was in the pharmacy in the health food store. And that can be good for the whole gamut: indigestion, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, everything, And that's safe even from babies from 11 months old. I think it says on there 11 weeks even. And, that's just 20 drops for adults in water. Then, of course, you've got things like aloe vera juice. You've got slippery elm, which can help in terms of, giving that mucilaginous kind of benefit. But as I said, it's one of those things we've just got to be cautious, because a lot of these medications, they're band-aiding it, and, they're actually not getting to the root of it, and they're causing a lot of long-term effects. So as I said, I've seen it time and time again. I even had a doctor friend, and we were talking about it, and that's what she sort of said too, that she was kind of frustrated because she'd also seen the research and things showing that, it's only designed for short-term use, and people were on it long-term, and they were getting, problems with their bones and things because they, if you stop all the acid, how do you absorb, and break down your food and absorb the minerals and things like that? So anyway, it's just something to think about. And as I said, it's, there is things that you can do, like smaller meals. And what was interesting too is when I was in the health food store, I used to notice common parallels in terms of what would aggravate things for people, like the reflux, heartburn sensation. And quite often it was food starting with C. So, it was chili, it was chocolate. And I even had one lady, she said, oh yeah, for her it was chicken. I said, yeah, and sometimes people will say it's cucumber, but it seems to be the C containing foods, or chocolate, caffeine. They can all in ways be, causing more of that heartburn-like sensation. So as I said, take that into account. Maybe try some of those more natural things. Try add it in some fermented foods. Try maybe the betaine hydrochloride, or that, not if you've got gastritis or ulcers or things like that. But, there's lots of different things that you can do without always thinking that that's the only solution, and that it's in terms of medication, and that, it's high acid because, it could actually be low acid because they're finding more and more that's what it is. Anyway, I'm going to go. I just wanted to jump in and talk a little bit about that. I'm going to have a shower. I will see you all tomorrow. Much love. Bye.